Hi, I'm Tim Janisewski. Welcome to our study of the Gospel of Matthew as we continue our Lectio Continua, that is our ongoing study of the first Gospel. We're now in chapter 25, where Jesus provides his fifth and final teaching block in the training of the 12 and the training of the church, people like you and me today. And Jesus is speaking on the subject of the end of the temple, the end of time, and the return of Christ as the Son of Man. And we've seen thus far that Jesus has answered the question, first of all, with regard to the fall of the temple in Jerusalem, which occurred in AD 70. Secondly, he's told us that we should look for the signs of the times of the coming of the Son of Man, and yet he ends with an emphasis on saying that no one knows the day and no one knows the time. Now, Jesus is going to pick up the question of the end of the age or the end of the world in chapter 25, beginning with verse 31. But we've got now a block of teaching by Jesus that comes between his teaching on the second coming and then his continued teaching on the end of all things. And this block has to do with how now shall his followers live in anticipation of the answers to these questions. Jesus actually gives 40 verses to answer the issue of how we are to live to God's glory at the current time. In fact, he gives more verses to this than he gave to answering the questions about the fall of Jerusalem and the signs of the coming of the Son of Man. So Jesus really wants us to focus perhaps equally much on how we are to go about daily life in these times, as much or more so than figuring out or understanding the answers to eschatological questions. So we're going to dive into this portion of practical application, looking at chapter 24, beginning in verse 42. So let's listen to what Jesus has to say. Therefore, says Jesus, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has set over his household to give the servants their food at the proper time? Well, blessed is the servant whom his master will find doing so when he returns. Truly I say to you, he will be set over all the master's possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and he begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour when he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, we see what the theme is that Jesus is leading us to for this time of living to the glory of God as we anticipate the return of Christ and the end of all things. In verse 42, Jesus gives it to us. He says, therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. And then Jesus reinforces it in verse 44. Therefore, you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. These twin sentences form the thrust and center of Jesus' teaching. Jesus is instructing us that we are to stay awake and be alert. We are to be ready for the coming of the Son of Man. And Jesus gives us this instruction by way of two opening illustrations, or perhaps we could even call them little parables to emphasize his point. The first one has to do with a householder, and a thief is perhaps going to come and break into his house, and Jesus simply says, well, you know, if the householder knows the hour in which the thief is coming, he's going to stay awake. He's going to be prepared. He's going to prevent his house from being pillaged or robbed, or someone being killed or perhaps injured by that thief. Now, the returning of Jesus is not the returning of a thief, but Jesus loved to use these juxtaposed images in contrast to get people's attention. He says that the Son of Man will come like a thief in the night. Well, he comes like a thief, but he's not a thief. He is the Son of Man, the Son of God, the returning King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But nevertheless, the point is, people will not anticipate it. They won't be ready. They won't be on the alert for it. With this one, I think often of someone that I know very well who is staying alert even when asleep. In his house, what does he have? First of all, he has a security system that will sound the alarm if an intruder comes. Second, he has a dog who's wonderfully friendly to those who know him, but not so much to a thief if a thief should try to intrude. And third, this individual handily has a handgun in his bedside stand. So you see, even if he is asleep, he's alert. He's staying awake. He's being vigilant if the thief comes in. In the same way, Jesus says we should always be living in a state of being prepared, of being ready for the return of Jesus Christ, no matter what we're doing, whether we are awake or whether we are asleep. And Jesus then goes on and adds a second little parable to this. He talks about a master of a household and a property who goes away on a trip. What does he do? He entrusts to his servant the care and oversight of his estate. Now, it was the responsibility of the servant to do the bidding of the master. The servant should be saying, the master is away. But what would the master have me do? Well, the master would have me care for his property. The master would have me feed the other servants. The master would have me be responsible for his things, even as he himself is responsible. And then says Jesus, the master returns unexpectedly, but finds a good servant, or the good servant doing exactly the will and the bidding of the master. And so impressed is the master that he says, you've been faithful and responsible in what I gave to you. When on my trip, I put you over all my possessions. And that is actually a reward for this person. Make an application. If we are faithful in the things that Christ gives us to do by his Spirit now, then we get the reward of perhaps more opportunity to do more on behalf of Christ. It's not a burden, it's a joy. We want to have more opportunity to make more impact for the glory of our Master Jesus Christ. And whenever he gives us that step-up promotion because we've been faithful in what he's asked thus far, that is where we flourish and where we can be fruitful. So that was a joy. But on the other hand, as we've seen in this simple illustration, Jesus contrasts it to a bad, wicked servant who says, well, you know, the master's away. Doesn't seem like he's coming back anytime soon. So what am I going to do? I'm going to beat my fellow servants. I'm not going to take care of the property. I'm going to hang out with gluttons and drunkards. And Jesus says, that individual is not alert and not awake, and the master will come at a moment when he does not anticipate it, and he will cut the man to pieces, and he will assign him a place with the hypocrites. A sobering warning indeed. But in both of these, the word of Jesus is that we stay awake, we stay alert, we are forever ready by being ready for forever, by doing the bidding of our Lord and our God. Whatever we do, in thought, word, or deed, we do it all in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. So I want to encourage you to be vigilant, to be aware, and to be active in doing the things that our Master would have us do, even when we do not know the day and the hour of his return. You know, I finish with a quick anecdote. It's a negative one. I was recently with a man who knows someone who is a Christian, and as a Christian, he is a very successful contractor. But what this individual said was, you know, he lives his life as a Christian personally, but he does not run his contracting business in the way the Master, in the way that Christ would run that contracting business. And here's the telling thing. It was then added, and everybody else knows it. Friends, do not be that contractor. Do not be a Christian in name only, and yet go about doing the business that we do in a way that the Master, that Christ would never have us do it. No, be consistent. Do the will of Christ in all things, and you will be ready, ready for forever. That's Spotlight Matthew for today. Thanks for joining us. Check us out on Facebook and share us with others. We'll talk to you next time.